You're watching Wish TV, News 8 at 11 with Phil Sanchez.
Welcome back. Starting July 1st, most Hoosiers over the age of 18 will be able to carry a handgun in public without a permit. House Bill 1296 was signed by Governor Eric Holcomb in March, despite concerns raised by some in law enforcement. And joining us tonight for our unfiltered conversation is Pierre Atlas, a senior lecturer at the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs at IUPUI and an expert on gun laws and gun culture in America. Pierre, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. What are the implications of this gun law change, sir?
Well, the main implication will be that anyone will be able to carry a handgun, concealed or openly, without a permit. In the past, really before July 1st, the Indiana handgun license required a criminal background check and fingerprints, and that will be removed. So that's going to be the major change. Technically, if you're a convicted felon or you have some other criteria, you're not allowed to carry a handgun either way. But those people that would in the past have been denied a permit because they didn't pass the background check will now be able to carry a gun unrestricted.
So what isn't changing because of this new law?
Well, the requirements to purchase a gun aren't changing. The restrictions on who's not allowed to carry a firearm will not change in the sense, again, the convicted felon, I believe someone who's had domestic violence, a restraining order, things like that, they're not allowed to. If they do, they're committing a crime just like they are now, if they're doing it.
How will the new law affect law enforcement and how they deal with the public?
So that's a really good question. It really depends on, in some ways, on the individual officer. Right now, on a stop, a law enforcement officer will run the plates of the car and the registration and all that, and the computer in the squad car will basically tell the officer if the person in if the person who owns the vehicle has a license to carry a firearm. In the future, that's not going to be there. So the police officer will no longer know necessarily that the person who has the car is carrying a firearm. If you have a license, it'll still show up. But right now, the officer pulling somebody over doesn't necessarily want to assume that the person driving the car is the person who's registered. A police officer being sort of wary might go on the assumption anyway that whoever is in the car might potentially be armed. And if that's the case, that attitude might not change. And the other thing, though, is that a police officer will not be allowed to ask a person whether or not they have a handgun license. They're not allowed to do that anymore. So because anybody can carry this permitless carry.
So I know you talk about this a lot. Obviously, it's your job. And mass shootings have obviously been on the minds of a lot of people following the tragic events in Buffalo, New York, and Uvalde, Texas. So what is your message to Hoosiers concerned about the possibility of more permitless carry guns in their communities?
So, most mass shootings are pre-planned, and a lot of thought is given to them by the shooter. Someone who is committing a premeditated crime probably would not have been deterred by the requirement to have a handgun license to carry concealed. That person probably would have, done it without a license. I think the real concern with permitless carry is not so much someone who's going to rob a bank or someone who's going to maybe commit a mass shooting. I think the real concern are going to be more the heat of the moment, crimes of passion type incidents. You will have more people who can now carry without having to have a background check. People who might in the past not have carried because they were afraid that they might because they'd be doing something illegal. Now they know that they can do it. You might have more increase in road rage with a firearm. Ordinary fights might immediately escalate more quickly to using a handgun. I think you're going to see a lot of people we might call the non-responsible gun owner who will feel now I can carry a handgun, and they may have no training. They may not have anything that's restraining them from using it in a moment of passion. And I think in those kinds of cases, we may see an increase in use of handguns. I don't think someone who's premeditatedly planning on committing a crime I don't know if it's going to make that much of a difference one way or the other. Frankly, there are a lot of other laws that person's going to be breaking besides carrying a concealed weapon.
Yeah. And the data, of course, will, as it always does, tell the story. Pierre Atlas will be keeping an eye on that data, and we look forward to talking with you in the future, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.